Today's video is going to be about how to create a box and whisker plot. There's basically 5 things that you need to find to be able to create a box and whisker plot. That would be the median, the first and third quartiles, and then your minimum and your maximum. So the median, which is probably one of the things you may be the most familiar with on this, the median is basically just the middle of your data. So I'm going to give you a list of numbers here in a minute for an example, and basically we just want to arrange those numbers from least to greatest. We want to figure out what the middle of that is, which you can basically do by just crossing off the lowest point, then the highest point, and then continue crossing off until you get to either one middle number, or if you end up with 2 numbers left in the middle, then you just want to find the average between those two, the mean of those two, meaning you want to add them both up and divide them by 2. The first quartile and the third quartile are both just medians as well. It's just that the first quartile is the median of the first half of your data, meaning basically it's a quarter, hence the name quartile. And the third quartile is just the median of the second half of your data, so like 3/4 or a 3/4. Your minimum literally just means the lowest number in your data set, the least number in your data set, and the maximum means the greatest number in your data set. Let's use this data set as an example. So as you'll notice here, I have already written out all the data points in numerical order. More than likely, usually you're going to be given your data set with the numbers just in random order, and you will need to rearrange them, but I thought I would just go ahead and arrange them to save us some time here for this video. So if we want to find the median with this, like we were talking about, I'd start on the left. I'm just going to cross off the least number, then I'll cross off the greatest number, and then I will just continue in that fashion as I get closer and closer to my middle to try and find my median. And so what we're going to see happens here is we actually do end up with 2 numbers that we have left. And so we don't find an exact middle number for our median, which means instead we just want to find the average of 12 and 13, the mean of 12 and 13, because that would be the middle of them. Well, if you take 12 plus 13, you get 25. 25 divided by 2 would give us 12.5. Or really, in this case, you can probably just eyeball it, and you probably can guess that the halfway point between 12 and 13 would be 12.5, 12.5. But in either case, we know now that our median would be 12.5. So, and we can go ahead and mark this as our middle of our data set, because that will be helpful for when we want to find our first and third quartile. Alright, now that I've found the median and been able to show where the halfway point is of our data set, now we can find the first and third quartile by just dealing with either the first or second half of our data. So if we look to the left of that line, the first half of our data, and we want to find the median of that, well, 3 is my least number, but now 12 is the greatest number for that half of the data set. So then I would go to the 4 and the 9 to cross off. Then we go to the 4 and the 7 to cross off. And once again, we do end up with 2 numbers, but this time they're both the same. So I don't really need to find the average of 6 and 6. I think we can feel pretty confident that our first quartile would be 6. And then we'll do the same thing for the right half of our data. So now 13 is my least number, and 25 is my greatest. Then 13 and 22, then 14 and 17, and that leaves us with 15 and 16 left. And if we find the mean of 15 and 16, or the middle of 15 and 16, then we would have, for our third quartile, 15.5. The last 2 things we need for our box and whisker plot would be our minimum and our maximum. Really, we probably could have just found those from the beginning if we wanted to, because we strictly just want to look at our data set and say, okay, well, our least number is 3, so that's the minimum, and our greatest number is 25, so that would be our maximum. That is all the information you need to be able to create a box and whisker plot. When you actually are ready to create your box and whisker plot, what you're going to want to do is your box part is from your first quartile to your third quartile. From your first to your third is your box. Your whiskers are your min and your max. Meaning, we start with the min, so the minimum is 3, and we will put a dot at the minimum. Then, this is just a whisker, so there's no box starting. You're just going to be drawing a straight line to wherever your first quartile is. Our first quartile is at 6, so 6 is where I'll actually start a box, meaning this is just simply a straight line, nothing special. We start our box at 6. Your box will end at your third quartile. In this case, it's 15.5. We are going to need to estimate a little bit here, but it's pretty close to 16, so somewhere around there probably. So this would be your box. Your median is simply just going to be a line somewhere inside that box wherever your median's at. So 12.5, again we're going to have to estimate a little bit. That line right there is our median. And then the other whisker we need is our maximum. Our maximum is 25, which should be right about here. And so we draw a whisker out to that dot. That's how you do a box and whisker plot. Again, the box is from the first to the third quartile, with the median simply being a line inside the box. And then your whiskers will be your minimum and your max, which is why that's just a line. Right? So this is min, this is first quartile, this is the median, this is third quartile, and this is your maximum. That's how you create a box and whisker plot.